Hey guys, welcome to the first Blindfolded Bloodborne tier list. We're going to be putting Witches of Hemwick up in S, like a blind man would do. No, I'm just Ought and B. Dang it. Anyway, hey guys, what's going on? I am not going to leave the face cam on, so I'll see you later. But what's going on? We are here for the Bloodborne boss fight tier list. The tier list that we do for every single Souls game that we have done. So we did one for Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3. The Dark Souls 2 and 3 boss fight tier lists being very controversial, which is fun. I'm hoping for a similar result here. Get a lot of comments, a lot of people talking. I don't make the decisions I make because of that. I genuinely believe the decisions I make for the tiers, but if people don't agree with me, you know, and it causes discussion, that's awesome. That works for me. There are a few bosses here that we will not be talking about, starting from Beast Possessed Soul all the way up to Yarnum with the Mary McQueen. These are all Chalice Dungeon bosses, so not that crazy. I'll throw them real quick. So Beast Possessed Soul is like a C. Merciless Watchers, that's like a C. Watchdog, that's like a B. The Marian Descendant, I'll give that a B. Keep the Lord C. Undead Giant C. Yarnum A. That's we'll just put those there. They're probably going to be at the bottom of their respective tiers, but those are all the Challenge Dungeon bosses ranked. Cool. I don't have footage for those. That's why we're not doing them. For 3 of the bosses, Witches of Hemwick, what other ones? Moon Presence and the Lawrence, the First Vicar. I'll be using other people's footage for that because I don't have footage for those fights. So that's basically it. Anyway, we're going to be starting with the One Reborn. Starting off not strong at all. I like the idea of this boss, it being this big just lump of flesh, and it actually, if you aren't overleveled, you know, like I was, it actually requires you to do a little bit of extra stuff to be able to fight him properly. There are 4 witches up on balconies on the sides that you have to kill to stop them from both attacking you and healing the boss, as well as I think they charge up an attack when they throw their big balls at him. I don't remember fully what they're doing with that, but that is a thing. One Reborn, I like his design. He comes out the moon, which is cool, but as an overall boss fight, I think he's a little boring. He doesn't have very many attacks, kind of slams back and forth. He can swap what side he's attacking from. He can put poo water on the ground, stuff like that. I'm not a massive fan of this boss. I'm going to go ahead and put it right at the top of C. It will probably not stay at the top of C, but that's where I'm putting it for now. Next is the Witches of Hemwick. As like I said, S tier, obviously no. Witches of Hemwick is very obviously to me a D tier boss. It's just you're in a room, and there are these witches, which by the way are a basic enemy later in the game. When you get to the Nightmare, not Nightmare Menses, when you get to Yargul, they're actually basic enemies. I think they're only basic enemies in Yargul when you are, what am I trying to say? When you are there the first time, when you're brought there by the Snatchers, not the second time. I believe they're not there the second time around. They're replaced with the foot wolf things, or the body part wolves. There's also a couple of them, or one of them at least I know, that's in the first area of the DLC. They are a basic enemy, and they are treated as such. All they do is they're invisible. They can shoot these like beams that can kind of wrap you up and keep you still, and then they will grab you and do a move where they like slice your throat a whole bunch. It's basically the extent of what they can do. Very boring boss. It's just running around a room and trying to find them and then attacking them like 4 or 5 times, and they disappear and you got to do it again. I didn't do it for Blindfold because it's not really a boss I think can be done blindfolded. Maybe you can with enough time. It's just boring. Next is Rom, the Vacuous Spider. I like Rom's arena a lot. I think Rom's the first boss fight, or is the last boss you fight before the game starts getting really out of control. There's some weird stuff like in the forest. What's up with the big snake balls? In Bergenworth, why are there bug people? But after Rom is when the game starts getting absolutely stupid. But when it comes to what Rom actually does, he has a couple of magic attacks. He can cause a big explosion, and he can also rain ice beaters from the sky, and then he can kind of thrash around a bit. His main thing, though, is he teleports and kind of has his spider minions take care of protecting him, which I think is cool. I think Rom I'm going to put him in B tier. I think that's a pretty good place for him. I'm sorry about the noise. I'm kind of fidgeting right now while I'm doing this. I think that's where I would put Rom, just because I think Rom is, he's an okay boss. Martyr Ligarius. Now, oh man, I can give an excuse for him being both A and S. He's really cool. No, I'm putting him in S tier. Ligarius is super sick. I love his design. I like the boss fight in general. He has a bunch of keep away stuff, but he also has this big freaking ice pick sort of thing that he uses to beat you up. And then in phase 2, he has the really cool thing where he has all the swords that are up in the air that are come flying at you. All of his attacks are awesome. His arena is really cool. His relationship with Alfred, the NPC, is awesome. And that's something you can very clearly see throughout the game. So I feel like that's why I can factor that in. When it comes to lore, if it's not something that is very clearly painted out, like, for example, with Ludwig, who we'll talk about later, if you know enough about the game, you know who Ludwig is, but if you aren't super familiar with the lore, or you don't talk to people in the game, you're not going to, figure it out. But with Ligarius, Alfred literally says, hey, this is my master. He went to Castle Canehurst to find all this stuff. So it's talked about by an NPC that you were pretty easily able to find. So I feel like I can factor in the lore a little bit. But even without the lore, I just think Ligarius, like I said, his design's cool. His attacks are awesome. It's a fun boss fight. He was one of the more fun ones to do blindfolded because he didn't have any walking sounds, so there wasn't a lot of telegraphing to his attacks, and I kept falling off the edge of the roof, so I had a lot of fun. So that's why I'm putting Ligarius in S tier. Next is Murgo's Wet Nurse. Now, I don't know if it's biased to put it in S tier, which is why I'm going to put it in A. This is my favorite base game boss. I could argue for it being S tier because I think it has one of the coolest designs that FromSoft has ever done. Something about the whole crow with the big wings and the scimitars and the weird elephant trunk thing that it has going on. I love it. It's awesome. The boss fight's the boss fight's kind of basic at first, but then when it puts up the shroud and it starts summoning the clones of itself and stuff, I think that is so sick. I just genuinely really like this boss. I'm only not putting in S tier because I don't know the community sentiment and I don't want to be ripped. You know what? No, I don't give a crap about community sentiment. It's not as cool as Ligarius, but it's my favorite base game boss. So I'm gonna put it in S tier because I don't care about what the community thinks. I care about what I think, and I think it's S tier. Now, Celestial Emissary. It's actually only worse than Witches of Hemwick, so I'm putting it in D tier, but it's actually only worse because at least the Witches of Hemwick have a slight gimmick, and that's that they're invisible. You just kind of beat this guy up, and he's one of the small blue things, and then he turns into a big blue thing. And that's like the whole boss, and I don't know why it's a boss. That's some Dark Souls 2 stuff right there. With him being a boss, that is a Dark Souls 2 boss right there. So yeah, he's in D tier. Ebrietas, Daughter of the Cosmos. I almost feel like she has to be S, but I'm gonna personally put her in A. I like Ebrietas, don't get me wrong. I think it's a super cool boss. It's one of the harder base game bosses for sure. I just think in general it's a cool fight, but for me, I don't think she has a ton actually going on in the boss fight. Like, she has her slams and her charges and stuff. She has the scream where she kind of damages you, and then she has the big laser show that she does. But besides that, there's not... Oh, she could spit blood at you too. So she has a fair amount of attacks, but there's nothing in there that like excites me to the level of an S tier boss. I still love Ebrietas. It's still A tier. Like, don't get me wrong. It's a really cool boss. It's A tier for sure. But nothing that... I don't think there's anything that puts just over that line of being like, oh man. Because you gotta remember, S tier is like, oh, this is like one of the best bosses in the game. And Ebrietas is awesome, but I wouldn't say it's like one of the best bosses. It's almost there for sure. It's definitely probably gonna stay on top of A, but for now that's where it's gonna be. Ludwig the Holy Blade. Wow, that's crazy. It's the top of S, at least for now. Ludwig is awesome. 3 out of 5 of the Bloodborne DLC bosses are going to be in S tier. Just a spoiler, because they are incredible. Ludwig, even if you don't know a lot about his lore, the energy that the 2 cutscenes you get during the fight bring are insane. You have the opening cutscene where there's just this literal river of blood, pile of corpses all in his boss room, and you have the one guy that's somehow still alive, and he's literally pleading for help because Ludwig. And then you see Ludwig, and it is the freakiest thing in the world. And then you get halfway through the boss fight, you get down to half health, and holy shit, he turns into Ludwig the Holy Blade, and wow, it's so cool. The cutscene's amazing. Him pulling out the Moonlight Greatsword and stuff, which is a cool reveal. You know, if you're a Souls fan in general, seeing the Moonlight Greatsword is an awesome reveal. But the dialogue is so cool, and then he seems like he's regained some of his humanity in it, and it's just, oh man, I love this boss fight so much. I love it so much that when I was starting in college, my first year of college, I was doing game design, and I used his a MIDI version of his boss theme for a boss fight I made in one of my games, because I just thought he was so cool. I think I actually used his sprite too. I like the boss. But yeah, I think Ludwig's awesome. And so he's top of S. Lawrence the First Vicar. This may be controversial, but I'm putting him here. My main reason is because we'll talk about later. Actually, let me go. Where's the Cleric Beast? Where's the Cleric Beast? Cleric Beast. Cleric Beast is going to be in B as well, because it is a perfectly serviceable first boss. It was very hard to do blindfolded because I wasn't doing very much damage. But the Cleric Beast is definitely a serviceable first boss. He's optional technically, so you can argue that Gascoigne is the first boss. But the Cleric Beast is actually the first boss you are supposed to fight, because he's what gives you insight. Like, you're supposed to get to him at level 1, get insight, so you can start leveling up for Gascoigne. He's cool. I like him. I like his attacks. I like his design. But at the end of the day, it is just kind of a big wolf guy, and that's not really super unique in this game. Introducing Lawrence the First Vicar. I'm keeping him in B tier as well, because at least for the first half of the fight, they're literally the exact same boss. Like, Lawrence has some fire attacks. I think he stretches out his arms a little bit more. But for the majority of the fights, they are the exact same boss fight. Once you get Lawrence down to, I believe, 1/3 HP, he loses the bottom half of his body. Like, he loses his legs, and then he starts having to deal with lava, which for me personally was a lot of trouble. The guy whose footage I grabbed, I don't know his name, but he destroyed Lawrence. Like, it was a no-hit run, which I thought was cool. But he destroyed him. And the lava was the main reason I didn't do Lawrence blindfolded, because I thought I couldn't because of the lava. Because the last time I played Bloodborne not blindfolded, Lawrence pissed me off so much because I just kept dying to the dang lava. But again, overall, he's just a Cleric Beast with a slightly different second phase. And I just think that is really only deserving of a B, in my opinion. Father Gascoigne, oh man, I don't know, dude. I don't want to put too many bosses in S, because it really feels like it starts to cheapen the tier. But, like, there's so many S tier bosses in this game, man. Like, he's a S tier boss. And honestly, maybe he's not. Because, like, I'm going to put him top of A. And the reason, can you move? The reason for that is because Gascoigne is your first, like, it's your first boss fight. Cleric Beast is there. Cleric Beast is cool. But there's something about Gascoigne that just feels so different. Because you're just fighting a guy at first, which, if you know anything about Dark Souls games, Bloodborne, anything like that, when you fight just a guy, that's actually the scariest thing in the world. Like, give me a million Ludwigs, you know? I don't want to fight a guy that's my size. That's scary. We'll talk about Orphan of Cause later. But he's just a guy, and then he turns halfway, like, you get to, I think, again, 1/3 HP, and he transforms, and that's like one of the scariest things to experience. He took me 27 attempts to be blindfolded because he's so freaking hard. Some other bosses would have taken me more had I done them at the proper level cap. We're not going to talk about that. But I just think Gascoigne is seriously one of the coolest human-sized bosses, at least in Bloodborne. He's definitely like top 3 human-sized bosses in Bloodborne. Maybe top 4. There's someone who could compete. There's 2 people who are clearly above him, and 1 person who he's like fighting against, sort of. But I just think Gascoigne is a very good example early on of exactly what you're dealing with in Bloodborne. In that stuff is weird, like stuff's going on. This guy who seems normal, he's a hunter, but you can tell at the beginning of the fight he's a little off, and he transforms into a werewolf, and you're like, oh no. And his lore is dripping throughout not only his arena, but the interactions you have with his daughter. And then you see the corpse of his wife on the... Oh, it's so good. He's A tier. I gotta move on, but he's A tier. Next is the amygdala. I'm gonna put it above this because, in my opinion, he is a slightly better cleric beast. Just because he doesn't have... No, okay, he's actually above Rom. The amygdala has quite a few things going on for him. First of all, you can only hit him in the head or arms to do like real damage. You can hit him in the penis, but it doesn't do that much damage, surprisingly enough. But he kind of does the age-old Dark Souls big boss thing of, I'm losing, let me rip off my arms. I still don't know why they decide that that's a good idea. Seems like it'd be a bit more... I mean, he does get stronger when he does it, but just in general, it seems like it'd be a disadvantage. He does a lot of smashing attacks. He has some laser beam stuff, which is kind of what puts him above Rom. I like his laser beam stuff. The amygdala's designs are ridiculous. They're so cool looking. The first time you see an amygdala when you spawn into freaking the entrance to Yargul, if you're doing your game normally, if you haven't farmed up a bunch of insight, it's like amazing. I like the amygdala's look. The boss fights, it's okay. That's why it's in B tier, but I do think it goes above everyone else that's in B. Living Failures. Okay. No, he's top of D. I was deciding between D and C. No, it's going to be C, and that's only because I have two more bosses or one more boss that's going to be D tier. And I don't want D and C to be too full of stuff, because Bloodborne, for the most part, hits on its bosses, but not always. Living Failures are literally just a bunch of Play-Doh ass looking guys who can slam their heads and sometimes summon meteors. That's the entire boss fight. It's insanely boring, and I hate it. We're moving on. Lady Maria. Okay. People are gonna hate me for this. I think Ludwig's cooler than Lady Maria. Not Ligarius. I think Ludwig's cooler than Lady Maria just because Ludwig, I think he has one of the best big enemy designs in From Software history. Everything about Ludwig is crafted to perfection, whereas Lady Maria is definitely a better boss fight. So maybe it should go above, but I like Ludwig more, so Ludwig's gonna stay up. Lady Maria is awesome though. Definitely the best hunter fight in the game. She's crazy hard to fight. Her attacks are so fast. When she gets to phase 2, she starts adding the blood extension. Phase 3, you get the fire on top of it, which just makes her range stupid. She shoots out a Getsuka Tensho. She shoots out a freaking the million-yard stab, and she does. She's so cool. I really like Lady Maria a lot. Don't get me wrong. Definitely the third best boss in the entire game. Second best boss in the entire game. My third favorite boss in the entire game. Maria's so cool. I could talk about her for a long time. The connection she has with Gehrman and the fact that she's, the actual daughter that Gehrman lost, which is what he turned the doll into, and blah, 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 all this stuff. Really, really cool stuff. But I'm going to put Lady Maria right below Ludwig and S tier because that's my personal opinion. Gehrman. Now, I am deciding on... No, I've decided in my head, and it's going to get hate, but I don't care. I'm going to put Gehrman top of 8 here. I do think he is slightly better than Gascoigne. I think there's only one final boss From Software has ever done that I would ever put in S tier, and we'll talk about that another time. I like Gehrman a lot. I think he has the second best arena in final boss for FromSoft. I mean, don't get me wrong, Gwyn's is really cool. I like being in just like the ashen-laden kiln. I think that's super awesome. But Gehrman, I love the white flower motif they do with Gehrman and then Ishin in Sekiro. I love that. I kind of hope that Shadow of the Erdtree does something similar with some white flowers, because I think the white flower aesthetic is just one of From Software's best things they do. It works perfectly with Gehrman, it works perfectly with Ishin. But I love Gehrman's fight. It's so cool to have the guy that's been your mentor throughout the entire game be the final boss. I think that's a super cool detail and just thing that kind of happens throughout the game. The boss fight in general is very hard. I beat him on the first try blindfolded. That's because I was over leveled. Don't let that speak to the actual difficulty of the fight. It's a sick fight in general. But I think the only thing that holds him back is that despite the fact that he has a second phase, it doesn't change what he does too much. Like I think he gets a grab and he gets like an explosion move. But as far as I remember, when he gets the blue aura around him, he gets the move where he floats up and then he like dashes at you and does like a combo. But I feel like it's lacking a little bit of extra flair. Some sword beam or just something that the aura does more than just give him I don't know, a raging demon attack, you know. Gehrman's so awesome. I love him. I think he's just barely not S tier for me. Again, Murgo's Wet Nurse, that should be an A tier, I understand, but this is just my personal opinion. Vicar Amelia. I believe Vicar Amelia is the best B tier boss. Yeah, it is. Maybe we'll talk about someone else in a minute, but Vicar Amelia is really cool. Definitely the first design in the game that makes you go, wow, this is, because like the Bloodstarved Beast we're going to talk about in a minute looks cool, but Vicar Amelia is huge, and you see this woman who's praying over this pendant, she transforms into Vicar Amelia, and you're like, I don't know what's going on. I keep saying Vicar. I'm pretty sure it's Vicar. It's like a rank in a church. I'm just going to keep saying Vicar though because it's faster and easier to say, and it's what I've been saying my whole life. But Vicar Amelia's fight is a little bit basic. Like it's your typical big your typical big enemy boss fight in a Souls game where she just has like slashes and slams and stuff like that. She doesn't have any crazy attacks, but she can heal herself, which is kind of cool. But I think that the reason she stands above the other ones in B tier is purely based on design. Her design is awesome. The blindfolded wolf thing with and she's like hunched over, and the actual cutscene, like again when she pops out and she turns and you see this full mass of wolf with the hair and everything. I think it's awesome. I love Vicar Amelia's design. Boss fights a little bit, which is why I think it's in B tier. But that's Vicar Amelia. Bloodstarved Beast. This is what I was trying to say. I wasn't sure if Vicar Amelia would be top of B tier or not, because I love this fight. But at the end of the day, it is just, man, I'm going to put it here. Amygdala is a cooler design and does more stuff, but something about the Bloodstarved Beast, like, it's one of my favorite fights in the base game. I like it more than Ebrietos. I like it more than Vicar Amelia. I like it more than Father Gascoigne and Gehrman. I'm only putting it down in B tier because it doesn't have a lot of flair those other bosses have. At the end of the day, it is just kind of a lycanthrope that can poison you. Like, that is what it is at the end of the day. I love the flayed skin thing that it has going on. I don't know what the hell's up with that, why it looks like that. It's crazy, especially when you walk down through the church in that area and you see the one that's strung up fucking crucified. Oh man, Bloodborne's so cool, man, isn't it? It's so cool. You can't see me looking at you. I don't have the webcam on. I'm looking right at you. Isn't Bloodborne so fucking cool? But I just think I love this boss fight a lot, but I think that because it lacks some level of flair, that's what keeps it out of being out of like A or S tier. That's why it stays down in B. Next is Mikolash, Host of the Nightmare. You can be top of D tier, my guy. This is hardly a boss fight. It is a glorified hunter fight. It's all it is. You just chase them around, and that's it. The only thing that puts him above Witches, Hemlock, and Celestial Emissary is because Mikolash is funny. He just does that while you're running around chasing him. He'll just moan. And it's so funny. I think Mikolash is hilarious. I love his stupid cage head. But it's not a boss fight. But then again, the three that are here, I don't think any of them are boss fights. That's why they're in D tier. Honestly, I'm going to rename the tier to Not a Real Boss Fight. So I'm going to name the tier because that's what it is. They're not real boss fights. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say about Mikolash. He's boring. Moon Presence. Okay, so this is the secret final boss of the game. A lot of you even know that. I did not do this in my playthrough because I did not think Moon Presence was possible blindfolded. After watching this footage that you're seeing on your screen of a guy fighting him, I feel like I made a mistake and I should have done it blindfolded because I think I actually could have whipped this thing's ass. But in the end, I didn't do it. and I do regret that a little bit. I think it's because I was worried that the Moon Presence was going to be a struggle, and after I beat Orphan of Cause, I really didn't want to struggle with anything. I kind of just wanted to be done with the game. So, but Moon Presence is awesome. I'm putting this up in S tier. I'm putting it right there. Moon Presence's design it's actually ridiculous. Almost as good as Ludwig's design. The Moon Presence is just phenomenal looking. I seriously really love its design. The boss fight's pretty cool. Has some cool stuff going on. It has 2 gimmicky attacks, one that brings you down to 1 HP, one that makes so you can't heal, which is why I thought I couldn't do a Blindfolded, but the no healing attack doesn't come out too often. And if I'd stayed on it and just whipped its ass a bunch, I think I would have been fine. But the lore implications, again, you're not supposed to know a lot about it, so I'm not going to factor it in. But the fact that it's literally Queen Yharnam's baby that ascended into a god is just like, what the hell? It's so cool. Moon Presence is definitely one of the better final bosses FromSoft has done. I can only think of one I find personally better, which is the same with Gehrman. But yeah, Moon Presence, super cool, easy ass. Dark Beast Pearl, man, you're so hard to place this late in the thing. Like, I want to put it in A tier, but I can't, because it's the same sort of thing as Bloodstarved Beast, where... So for me personally, I'm going to put it here. I do think it's a slightly better boss fight than Bloodstarved Beast, because the electric wolf stuff that's got going on with its friggin' skull face, it's awesome. But Dark Beast Pearl, maybe it's just because of the point in the game that you're supposed to fight it. It never excites me the way Bloodstarved Beast does. When you fight Bloodstarved Beast, that's a freaking marathon of a fight, because of the poison and everything that's going on. Dark Beast Pearl, if you fight him at the time most players fought him, you're in Yargle, and he's kind of weak at that point. Like, he's not super strong. And so, the lightning stuff is awesome. I love it. His design is ridiculously cool. But I think he lacks, again, flair. He has more flair than Bloodstarved Beast, but Bloodstarved Beast is more of a fun boss fight for me, so that's where I'm putting him. Shadows of Yharnam, our classic, hey look, it's multiple enemies fight. I'm gonna put him top of C. Shadows of Yharnam is one of the better multi-person boss fights you do, because one, it's not like a multi-person boss fight where it's like they're the same. They're all different. So you have the 2 sword guys, one of which has like an extendo sword, and then you have the magic guy. So they're different enough that it feels like a real boss fight, not just you just put 3 of the same enemy, and then after you, depending on the order you kill them, the boss fight changes too, which I think is a really cool mechanic. Honestly, I'm starting to talk myself out of putting them in C tier. I kind of want to put them... I'm going to put them above Cleric Beast, but below Lawrence, because I don't think putting them next to each other is fair. I do think Lawrence at least has a bit more going on. But you all 3 of the guys that you kill, they all have their own unique final form where they summon the gigantic snakes. One they come out of the ground, another one summons one that like chases you. They're honestly, it's a cool boss fight. It's definitely probably the best multi-enemy boss fight FromSoft has done. I'm trying to think if that's 100% true. I can't think about Sekiro right now. The painting monkeys is ass. And nothing in Dark Souls 1 or 2 or 3 really. Like, I like the Vatican fight, but other than that, I don't know. I think that's the proper place for them, though. And finally, of course, I always end the list with what, in my opinion, is the best boss fight in the game. It's Orphan of Cause. I love when the final boss of the DLC of a Souls game is the best part of is the best boss of the game. Dark Souls 1. Who was the final boss of the Dark Souls 1 DLC? It was Magnus. That fight's pretty cool, don't get me wrong. But I like Gwyn a bit more. Dark Souls 2. Fume Knight's sick. Don't get me wrong, Fume Knight's awesome. So is Sir Alone. Those are the only 2 that I really enjoyed from the DLCs. And then Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3 is Gale. You can't beat that shit. We don't know about... Sekiro doesn't have DLC, and then we don't know about Elden Ring yet. But I think Orphan of Cause is perfect. It is a perfect boss fight. The opening cutscene is so cool, because once you see its name, Orphan of Cause, you look at the beached whale, this fucking dead manta ray that's on the beach, and you go, holy shit, That's the god that Mikolash was talking about during his boss fight. And you're like, I'm fighting the child of a god right now that was literally just born. And he starts crying right as the cutscene goes dark. And you're like, oh my god. And then he starts whipping your ass with his own placenta. And you're like, what is going on? I love this fight so much. He was my favorite boss fight to fight blindfolded. He's the most rewarding boss fight to fight blindfolded. He's my favorite boss in all of Bloodborne. And overall, I just think he is like probably like top 5 FromSoft bosses of all time. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. That is our Bloodborne tier list. Gonna read them off one more time. So in D tier, or not a real boss fight tier, you have Celestial Emissary, Witches of Hemwick, and Mikolash, Host of the Nightmare. In C tier, you have the Undead Giant, Keeper of the Old Lords, and the Merciless Watchers, and the Beast Possessed Soul, which were all Chalice Dungeon bosses, followed by the Living Failures and the One Reborn. In B tier, we got some more Chalice Dungeons. We got Thumerian Descendant and Watchdog of the Old Lords, followed by Cleric Beast, Shadows of Yharnam, Lawrence the First Vicar, the Vacuous Spider Rom, Amygdala, Dark Beast Pearl, Bloodstarved Beast, and Vicar Amelia. A lot of B tier bosses in Bloodborne. They're good, but I think when it comes to, when you compare them to the other bosses in this game, pretty okay. You got your one A tier Chalice Dungeon boss being the Yharnam, the Thumerian Queen. Pretty cool fight if you manage to do all the Chalice Dungeon stuff. Again, I don't have footage for her. But it's a Chalice Dungeon fight, so I wasn't really counting anyway. But then you have the 3 ones. You have Ebrietas, Father Gascoigne, and Garam the First Hunter. 3 really solid, really great fights, just missing that one thing to put them over to S tier. And then finally you have our 6 S tier bosses with Murgo's Wet Nurse, which is definitely a personal, probably more of an A tier boss, but for me personally it's S tier. Martyr Ligarius, the Moon Presence, Lady Maria, Ludwig the Holy Blade, and Orphan of Cause. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. On Tuesday, we will be starting our Sekiro playthrough, and we are doing True Ending on that, so don't you worry about that. Very cool stuff. We're going to be seeing every single boss done, including True Owl, so that's going to be a ton of fun. Hope you guys are excited for that. Like I said at the end of Bloodborne, I kind of murdered Sekiro. Like, I didn't struggle that much in that game, so I'm worried that it's going to be a bit boring to watch. We're going to be talking more about the areas and about the story, rather than focusing on the boss fights, because they didn't take me too long. But then after that is Demon Souls, and then we got Elden Ring, and oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Literally, the DLC comes out a month from now. I'm so excited. I only have a month to beat the rest of Demon Souls and Elden Ring, so we're going to see if we're able to do that. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed all of Bloodborne, watching me do it blindfolded. I will be planning on streaming. I have an idea of doing a set of streams where I try to beat the bosses of Bloodborne blindfolded, but with each weapon. So I did, some with the Whirligig Saw. I did the DLC bosses with the Beast Cutter. I did a couple with the Hunter's Axe. But like every boss with Threaded Cane, every boss with Saw Cleaver, every boss with Saw Spear, every boss with a Kirk Hammer, stuff like that. Because I just love Bloodborne so much. I think it has the most replayability out of all the games, because Dark Souls 3 is a little long, but I think Bloodborne's the perfect length for it to be like, oh, I want to play this over and over and over again. But yeah, that's ideas that I have been floating around in my head. But anyway, thank you guys again one more time so much for watching, and I will see you guys on Tuesday for Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. Bye!